Welcome to tutorial number 10. Today we're going to cover the important subject of analytics and reporting. And let me just say a few words what this is about. So in the last session I showed you as one of the extras the journal reader, and what that is pretty much the same thing you would do with a paper journal, right? You write free-form entries in a journal, and then later you may want to pick that up and read what you have written previously, and you can go pretty much through the pages and read what you had previously written. Of course, in the software, one key element is also that you can track, the various dimensions over time, your productivity, your task, and so forth. So once you've done that for a while, it's pretty common that you want to get some statistics and some patterns and analysis of what you've actually been doing, and this is precisely what we're going to cover here today. Now, as we went through the previous lessons, I pretty much created data as we went along. So in that version we're usually using, there's not much data in there. So what I'm actually going to use today here is my own copy of the Ultimate Journal, which I've been using for probably around 18 months or so, because there's a whole bunch of data in there, so you can see a lot more about how these statistics work. So I have this USB stick here. As I'm opening this, you see here's the Mac executable and all the databases. So one cool thing about the software, it is run straight from a USB stick, and it writes nothing in the Windows registry, nothing in the Mac system files. So all you need is pretty much have the files in a directory, or in this case a USB stick. So let me launch this here from that USB stick. Of course, the only thing that you have to keep in mind, if you run this from a USB stick, it will be slightly slower, simply because the access on the USB stick takes a little bit longer here. So this is launching, and so I'm logging in here. So this is pretty much the copy I'm using on a daily basis. And let me just make this a bit bigger here. So let's look at what kind of analytics you can actually do with this software. So one of the simplest analytics you can do is you just go to data and click on statistics. And this will take a second here as going through the databases, and this shows you 29 elements here of pretty much what is in the databases the software manages. So you can see here in row number 1, there's 570 days in the database. That means I have kept the journal for 570 days. You see it's 486 people in there, female, male. You can also see here I've, over the last 18 months or so, set 1794 daily goals, right? So it's roughly 3 daily goals per day, right? See ideas and so forth. And let's look at a couple other things here. I've tracked 391 moods. I've written a total of 238,000 plus words into my freeform journal over this time frame, with 418 words average per daily entry, right? You can see there's 7,000 foods here in the USDA database. That's part of the software, which we covered in the previous section, and all kinds of statistics here that you can get a quick glance, right? So if you want to do a little bit more deep analytics, like go more, actually shows you what you've done over the time. So the first thing you can do is, as I just did here, is a little column map here. If you click on this, and you get this dimension map here, as it's called, and you see here there's 2012. You can go back and forth to the years here, and if I click on focus dimension per day, this pretty much shows you what dimension I had set as a focus as I was keeping my daily journal. And you can see in my case here, there's a lot of orange in here, so I set a lot of focus on physical health. If I go back to 2011 and click on this again, right, you see it's a bit more spotty because I was still developing the software, so didn't keep track every day. But you see there's a lot more here of other dimensions in there as well, right? Let's go back to 2012. And then the next 9 here is pretty much for each dimension. You can pretty much show how did I do in each of the dimensions, and that works pretty much. If the value is 1 to 3, it's red. If it's 4 to 7, it's yellow, and if it's greater than 8, it's green, right? So with the paradigm that 1 is the worst and 10 is the best, you see there's one day here in the physical health where apparently I didn't do so well, so it's April 13th. So I could go now back and actually look up that entry and see what actually happened there. As you go through the other dimensions, you can see here how this is adjusting, right? So that's kind of giving you a quick view for each of the 9 dimensions on what the distribution of patterns are. And then the last 3 here, they do some more calculations, right? I'll show you one of those, which is productivity. So this pretty much shows you an assessment of the productivity that I've tracked here over time. Again, we can go back to 2011 and show this, right? So as it looks here, my productivity apparently this year has been a lot better than last year, right? So this again gives you a quick view. Now you see there's a button Analyze. If I click this, and this will take a little bit of time here, and again remember we're running this from a USB stick here, so this will take a couple of seconds. What it's doing now, it's going through all the records in the database and it is calculating the average productivity, the average percentage of daily tasks that I completed, my average mood balance, my average journal words written, the total words written, and so forth. And also when it's done within analysis, it will show me for the dimensions in these columns here, the percent each dimension has of the focus, meaning how many times have I set this specific dimension as a focus, and it will also calculate the average value of each of the 9 dimensions, right? Fortunately, this has just completed here. So if you see here, focus dimension not assigned is about 3%. You see in 42% of all the records in the database, I've had set physical health as a focus, work life, and environment. So these are my top 3, right? Can of course also sort this here, right? And then as I'm going through, I can also see for each of these dimensions here, for example, on environment, the average over all the 570 records that are in there is 7.72, with 10 being the highest. And then here it shows you a graphical representation, so the further these wedges here go out to the outer edge, which is 10, the better. So I guess the perfect state you could achieve would be all the dimensions here going to the edge, which would be a perfect 10 over all records, and of course that is barely possible for a normal human being, right? So what you can also do is that you can limit the time frame for the analysis. So if I go for 1 month and I click, this should be a lot quicker here, since it's only going through a small sample. So you see this has slightly adjusted here. So this is only over the last 30 days, all these values here. So this is some basic analytics, and you see there's also right now 17 reports on here. So what this will pretty much show you is the, in this case, productivity over time, right? And since I still have checked to limit the dates, so this shows me pretty much right now in the info tab here a chart for the last 30 days where my productivity has been. Again, if I uncheck this, it will do this over all the records in the database, so you see it's a lot more compressed, since this is like, again, 570 days in here. You can see I can look at physical dimension over time, right? I can look at all kinds of other things, and again, whatever you limit here, will go, if this is something that's over time, we'll limit it to those ranges. There's also a couple of pie charts in there. You can go, for example, the distribution of focus dimensions over time, right? So you see here 43% roughly is for physical health, right, with 226 incidents. Again, if I limit this over the last 30 days, let's see what that does. See, it changes a little bit, right? So that's pretty cool here as well. You can look at how many males and females are in the database. That's pretty straightforward. And here's a pretty cool thing. You can have a graph here, distribution of people likability. That's obviously not over time. So I think we looked previously, let's see again how many people are in the database. So there's 486 people in the database. So this pretty much shows which likability rating, and again we go back, let's not do this here now because I don't want you to see all my personal contact, but if I went in the people tag here, you would see the 486 people actually in there, and you could see likability ratings assigned. And not a big surprise, right? It resembles pretty much a standard distribution like most other things do, right? So the big cluster of the people, I assigned the medium likability to somewhere between 5 and 7. Very few people with a low likability rating, very few people with a very high one, right? So that's a pretty cool feature here as well. Again, we mentioned this a lot of times previously. There's 17 reports in here right now, so we're really looking for feedback on what other reports to include here. So as we are getting in user feedback, the plan is to include a lot more reports that could be included here. So just think about what else would you like to see reported, and we'll try our best to include this in here. So that's pretty much reporting and analytics. Let me just show you one thing that you can also use to get some analytics done here. Let's go back to the health module here. So it takes a second to load since it's doing some calculations. And remember, we have this workout tab here, and you can see here, and you see it has only been started here at the end of July when this feature was first implemented. So it shows you the color coding here of the workouts I had recorded per day, right? So you see here this darker green is a predominant thing. So I was fortunately, it looks like very active there. And today, I don't think I've recorded anything yet, right? So if I go back, to yesterday, for example, you see it also pulls up the weight at this date, right? So you can derive some analytics from other modules in the software as well, right? And so this, I think, provides a pretty good base, to find some patterns. And like I said, as we are getting more feedback in, one of the goals is definitely to include more reports in which to slice and dice the data that you put in here, right? So again, the software is about free-form journaling, right, that you can do on a daily basis, but it is definitely also about, finding patterns in analytics. And in order to do that, of course, you have to keep using the software, I would say at least for a month or so, and I think then you will quickly see how you see patterns in the dimensions and things like that. So this pretty much concludes our session for today, which was about analytics and reporting.